Mediumship is the practice of certain people known as mediums to purportedly mediate communication between spirits of the dead and living human beings. There are different types of mediumship including spirit channeling, and ouija. Humans have been fascinated with contacting the dead since the beginning of human existence. Cave paintings by indigenous Australians date back 28,000 years, some depicting skulls, bones, spirits and the afterlife. Other cave paintings in Indonesia date back a further 10,000 years. Mediumship gained popularity during the 19th century, when ouija boards were used by the upper classes as a source of entertainment. Investigations during this period revealed widespread fraud, with some practitioners employing techniques used by stage magicians, and the practice began to lose credibility. Fraud is still rife in the medium/psychic industry, with cases of deception and trickery being discovered to this day. Scientific researchers have attempted to ascertain the validity of claims of mediumship. An experiment undertaken by the British Psychological Society led to the conclusion that the test subjects demonstrated no mediumistic ability. Several different variants of mediumship exist. Arguably the best-known forms involve a spirit purportedly taking control of a medium's voice and using it to relay a message, or where the medium simply hears the message and passes it on. Other forms involve materializations of the spirit or the presence of a voice, and telekinetic activity. The practice is associated with several religious belief systems such as Vodun, spiritualism, spiritism, Candomblé, voodoo, Umbanda, and some New Age groups. Concept. In Spiritism and Spiritualism, the medium has the role of an intermediary between the world of the living and the world of spirit. Mediums claim that they can listen to and relay messages from spirits, or that they can allow a spirit to control their body and speak through it directly or by using automatic writing or drawing. Spiritualists classify types of mediumship into two main categories: mental and physical. Mental mediums purportedly tune into the spirit world by listening, sensing, or seeing spirits or symbols. Physical mediums are believed to produce materialization of spirits, apports of objects, and other effects such as knocking, rapping, bell ringing, etc. by using ectoplasm created from the cells of their bodies and those of séance attendees. During séances, mediums are said to go into trances, varying from light to deep, that permit spirits to control their minds. Channeling can be seen as the modern form of the old mediumship, where the channel, or channeler, purportedly receives messages from teaching spirit, an ascended master, from God, or from an angelic entity, but essentially through the filter of his own waking consciousness, or higher self. History. Attempts to communicate with the dead and other living human beings, aka spirits, have been documented back to early human history. The story of the Witch of Endor, in the most recent edition of the NIV, which is rendered medium in the passage, tells of one who raised the spirit of the deceased prophet Samuel to allow the Hebrew king Saul to question his former mentor about an upcoming battle, as related in the first book of Samuel in the Jewish Tanakh, the Old Testament. Mediumship became quite popular in the 19th century United States and the United Kingdom after the rise of spiritualism as a religious movement. Modern spiritualism is said to date from practices and lectures of the Fox sisters in New York State in 1848. The trance mediums Pascal Beverly Randolph and Emma Hardinge Britten were among the most celebrated lecturers and authors on the subject in the mid-19th century. Allan Kardec coined the term spiritism around 1860. Kardec claimed that conversations with spirits by selected mediums were the basis of his The Spirits book and later, his 5-book collection, Spiritist Codification. Some scientists of the period who investigated spiritualism also became converts. They included chemist Robert Hare, physicist William Crookes, 1832–1919, and evolutionary biologist Alfred Russel Wallace, 1823–1913. Nobel laureate Pierre Curie took a very serious scientific interest in the work of medium Eusapia Palladino. Other prominent adherents included journalist and pacifist William T. Stead, 1849–1912, and physician and author Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859–1930. After the exposure of the fraudulent use of stage magic tricks by physical mediums such as the Davenport brothers and the Bangs sisters, mediumship fell into disrepute. However, the religion and its beliefs continue in spite of this, with physical mediumship and seances falling out of practice and platform mediumship coming to the fore. In the late 1920s and early 1930s there were around 250,000 practicing spiritualists and some 2,000 spiritualist societies in the UK, in addition to flourishing microcultures of platform mediumship and home circles. Spiritualism continues to be practiced, primarily through various denominational spiritualist churches in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom, over 340 spiritualist churches and centers open their doors to the public, and free demonstrations of mediumship are regularly performed. Terminology: Spirit guide. In 1958, the English-born spiritualist C. Doreen Phillips wrote of her experiences with a medium at Camp Chesterfield, Indiana. In Reverend James Lawton's seances there are many Indians. They are very noisy and appear to have great power. The little guides, or doorkeepers, are usually Indian boys and girls as messengers who help to locate the spirit friends who wish to speak with you. Spirit operator. A spirit who uses a medium to manipulate psychic energy or energy systems. Demonstrations of mediumship. In old-line spiritualism, a portion of the services, generally toward the end, is given over to demonstrations of mediumship through contact with the spirits of the dead. A typical example of this way of describing a mediumistic church service is found in the 1958 autobiography of C. Doreen Phillips. She writes of the worship services at the spiritualist Camp Chesterfield in Chesterfield, Indiana. Services are held each afternoon, consisting of hymns, a lecture on philosophy, and demonstrations of mediumship. Today, demonstration of mediumship is part of the church service at all churches affiliated with the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, NSAC, and the Spiritualists National Union, SNU. Demonstration links to NSAC's Declaration of Principle No. 9. We affirm that the precepts of prophecy and healing are divine attributes proven through mediumship. Mental mediumship. Mental mediumship is communication of spirits with a medium by telepathy. The medium mentally hears, clairaudience, sees, clairvoyance, and or feels, clairsentience, messages from spirits. Directly or with the help of a spirit guide, the medium passes the information on to the message's recipient, S. When a medium is doing a reading for a particular person, that person is known as the sitter. Transmediumship. Transmediumship is often seen as a form of mental mediumship. Most transmediums remain conscious during a communication period, wherein a spirit uses the medium's mind to communicate. The spirit or spirits using the medium's mind influences the mind with the thoughts being conveyed. The medium allows the ego to step aside for the message to be delivered. At the same time, one has awareness of the thoughts coming through and may even influence the message with one's own bias. Such a trance is not to be confused with sleepwalking, as the patterns are entirely different. Castillo, 1995, states, trance phenomena result from the behavior of intense focusing of attention, which is the key psychological mechanism of trance induction. Adaptive responses, including institutionalized forms of trance, are tuned into neural networks in the brain. In the 1860s and 1870s, trance mediums were very popular. Spiritualism generally attracted female adherents, many who had strong interests in social justice. Many trance mediums delivered passionate speeches on abolitionism, temperance, and women's suffrage. Scholars have described Leonora Piper as one of the most famous trance mediums in the history of spiritualism. In the typical deep trance, the medium may not have clear recall of all the messages conveyed while in an altered state. Such people generally work with an assistant. That person selectively wrote down or otherwise recorded the medium's words. Rarely did the assistant record the responding words of the sitter and other attendants. An example of this kind of relationship can be found in the early 20th century collaboration between the trance medium Mrs. Cecil M. Cook of the William T. Stead Memorial Center in Chicago, a religious body incorporated under the statutes of the state of Illinois, and the journalist Lloyd Kenyon Jones. The latter was a non-medium spiritualist who transcribed Cook's messages in shorthand. He edited them for publication in book and pamphlet form. Physical mediumship. Physical mediumship is defined as manipulation of energies and energy systems by spirits. This type of mediumship is claimed to involve perceptible manifestations, such as loud raps and noises, voices, materialized objects, apports, materialized spirit bodies, or body parts such as hands, legs and feet. The medium is used as a source of power for such spirit manifestations. By some accounts, this was achieved by using the energy or ectoplasm released by a medium. See spirit photography. The last physical medium to be tested by a committee from Scientific American was Mina Crandon in 1924. Most physical mediumship is presented in a darkened or dimly lit room. Most physical mediums make use of a traditional array of tools and appurtenances, including spirit trumpets, spirit cabinets, and levitation tables. Direct voice. Direct voice communication is the claim that spirits speak independently of the medium, who facilitates the phenomenon rather than produces it. The role of the medium is to make the connection between the physical and spirit worlds. Trumpets are often utilized to amplify the signal, and directed voice mediums are sometimes known as trumpet mediums. This form of mediumship also permits the medium to participate in the discourse during seances, since the medium's voice is not required by the spirit to communicate. Leslie Flint was one of the best-known exponents of this form of mediumship. Channeling. In the later half of the 20th century, Western mediumship developed in two different ways. One type involved psychics or sensitives who speak to spirits and then relay what they hear to their clients. The other incarnation of non-physical mediumship is a form of channeling in which the channeler goes into a trance, or leaves their body, allowing a spiritual entity to borrow their body, who then talks through them. When in a trance, the medium appears to come under the control of the spirit of a departed soul, sometimes entering into a cataleptic state, although modern channelers may not. Some channelers open the eyes when channeling, and remain able to walk and behave normally. The rhythm and the intonation of the voice may also change completely. A widely known channeler of this variety is J.Z. Knight, who claims to channel the spirit of Ramtha, a 30,000-year-old man. Others purport to channel spirits from future dimensions, ascended masters, or, in the case of the trance mediums of the Brahma Kumaris, God. Other notable channels are Jane Roberts for Seth, Esther Hicks for Abraham, and Carla L. Ruckert for R.A. Psychic senses. In spiritualism, psychic senses used by mental mediums are sometimes defined differently from in other paranormal fields. A medium is said to have psychic abilities, but not all psychics function as mediums. The term clairvoyance, for instance, may be used by spiritualists to include seeing spirits and visions instilled by spirits. The Parapsychological Association defines clairvoyance as information derived directly from an external physical source. Clairvoyance, or clear seeing, is the ability to see anything that is not physically present, such as objects, animals, or people. This sight occurs in the mind's eye. Some mediums say that this is their normal vision state. Others say that they must train their minds with such practices as meditation in order to achieve this ability, and that assistance from spiritual helpers is often necessary. Some clairvoyant mediums can see a spirit as though the spirit has a physical body. They see the bodily form as if it were physically present. Other mediums see the spirit in their mind's eye, or it appears as a movie or a television program or a still picture like a photograph in their mind. Clairaudience or clear hearing is usually defined as the ability to hear the voices or thoughts of spirits. Some mediums hear as though they are listening to a person talking to them on the outside of their head, as though the spirit is next to or near to the medium, and other mediums hear the voices in their minds as a verbal thought. Clairsentience or clear sensing is the ability to have an impression of what a spirit wants to communicate, or to feel sensations instilled by a spirit. Clairsentience or clear feeling is a condition in which the medium takes on the ailments of a spirit, feeling the same physical problem which the spirit person had before death. Clairaudience or clear smelling is the ability to smell a spirit. For example, a medium may smell the pipe tobacco of a person who smoked during life. Clairgustance or clear tasting is the ability to receive taste impressions from a spirit. Claircognizance or clear knowing is the ability to know something without receiving it through normal or psychic senses. It is a feeling of just knowing. Often, a medium will claim to have the feeling that a message or situation is right or wrong. Explanations. Paranormal belief. Spiritualists believe that phenomena produced by mediums, both mental and physical mediumship, are the result of external spirit agencies. The psychical researcher Thomson J. Hudson in The Law of Psychic Phenomena, 1892, and Theodore Flournoy in his book Spiritism and Psychology, 1911, wrote that all kinds of mediumship could be explained by suggestion and telepathy from the medium and that there was no evidence for the spirit hypothesis. The idea of mediumship being explained by telepathy was later merged into the super-ESP hypothesis of mediumship, which is currently advocated by some parapsychologists. In their book How to Think About Weird Things, Critical Thinking for a New Age, authors Theodore Schick and Louis Vaughan have noted that the spiritualist and ESP hypothesis of mediumship has yielded no novel predictions, assumes unknown entities or forces, and conflicts with available scientific evidence. Scientific skepticism. Scientists who study anomalistic psychology consider mediumship to be the result of fraud and psychological factors. Research from psychology for over 100 years suggests that where there is not fraud, mediumship and spiritualist practices can be explained by hypnotism, magical thinking and suggestion. Trance mediumship, which according to spiritualists is caused by discarnate spirits speaking through the medium, can be explained by dissociative identity disorder. Magicians such as Joseph Rinn have staged fake séances in which the sitters have claimed to have observed genuine supernatural phenomena. Albert Moll studied the psychology of séance sitters. According to Wolfram, 2012, argued that the hypnotic atmosphere of the darkened séance room and the suggestive effect of the experimenter's social and scientific prestige could be used to explain why seemingly rational people vouchsafed occult phenomena. The psychologists Leonard Zusne and Warren Jones in their book Anomalistic Psychology, A Study of Magical Thinking, 1989, wrote that spirits' controls are the products of the medium's own psychological dynamics. A fraudulent medium may obtain information about their sitters by secretly eavesdropping on sitters' conversations or searching telephone directories, the internet, and newspapers before the sittings. A technique called cold reading can also be used to obtain information from the sitter's behavior, clothing, posture, and jewelry. The psychologist Richard Wiseman has written, "Cold reading also explains why psychics have consistently failed scientific tests of their powers. By isolating them from their clients, psychics are unable to pick up information from the way those clients dress or behave. By presenting all of the volunteers involved in the test with all of the readings, they are prevented from attributing meaning to their own reading, and therefore can't identify it from readings made for others. As a result, the type of highly successful hit rate that psychics enjoy on a daily basis comes crashing down, and the truth emerges their success depends on a fascinating application of psychology and not the existence of paranormal abilities. In a series of fake seance experiments, Wiseman et al. 2003, paranormal believers and disbelievers were suggested by an actor that a table was levitating when, in fact, it remained stationary. After the seance, approximately one-third of the participants incorrectly reported that the table had moved. The results showed a greater percentage of believers reporting that the table had moved. In another experiment, the believers had also reported that a handbell had moved when it had remained stationary and expressed their belief that the fake seances contained genuine paranormal phenomena. The experiments strongly supported the notion that in the seance room, believers are more suggestible than disbelievers for suggestions that are consistent with their belief in paranormal phenomena. Fraud. There have been many instances of fraud and trickery in mediumship practices from its earliest beginnings to contemporary times. Seances take place in darkness, so the poor lighting conditions can become an easy opportunity for fraud. Physical mediumship that has been investigated by scientists has been discovered to be the result of deception and trickery. Ectoplasm, a supposed paranormal substance, was revealed to be made from cheesecloth, butter, muslin, and cloth. Mediums would also stick cut-out faces from magazines and newspapers onto cloth or on other props and use plastic dolls in their seances to pretend to their audiences spirits were contacting them. Lewis Spence, in his book An Encyclopedia of Occultism, 1960, wrote, "A very large part is played by fraud in spiritualistic practices, both in the physical and psychical, or automatic, phenomena, but especially in the former. The frequency with which mediums have been convicted of fraud has, indeed, induced many people to abandon the study of psychical research, judging the whole bulk of the phenomena to be fraudulently produced. In Britain, the Society for Psychical Research has investigated mediumship phenomena. Critical SPR investigations into purported mediums and the exposure of fake mediums has led to a number of resignations by spiritualist members." On the subject of fraud in mediumship, Paul Kurtz wrote, "No doubt a great importance in the paranormal field is the problem of fraud. The field of psychic research and spiritualism has been so notoriously full of charlatans, such as the Fox sisters and Eusapia Palladino, individuals who claim to have special power and gifts but who are actually conjurers who have hoodwinked scientists and the public as well, that we have to be especially cautious about claims made on their behalf. Magicians have a long history of exposing the fraudulent methods of mediumship. Early debunkers included Chung Ling Soo, Henry Evans, and Julian Proskauer. Later magicians to reveal fraud were Joseph Dunninger, Harry Houdini, and Joseph Rinn. 1800s. Many 19th-century mediums were discovered to be engaged in fraud. While advocates of mediumship claim that their experiences are genuine, the Encyclopaedia Britannica article on spiritualism notes in reference to a case in the 19th century that, one by one, the spiritualist mediums were discovered to be engaged in fraud, sometimes employing the techniques of stage magicians in their attempts to convince people of their clairvoyant powers. The article also notes that the exposure of widespread fraud within the spiritualist movement severely damaged its reputation and pushed it to the fringes of society in the United States. At a séance in the house of the solicitor John Snaith Reimer in Ealing in July 1855, a sitter Frederick Merrifield observed that a spirit hand was a false limb attached on the end of the medium Daniel Douglas Home's arm. Merrifield also claimed to have observed Home use his foot in the séance room. The poet Robert Browning and his wife Elizabeth attended a séance on 23 July 1855 in Ealing with the Reimers. During the séance, a spirit face materialized which Home claimed was the son of Browning, who had died in infancy. Browning seized the materialization and discovered it to be the bare foot of home. To make the deception worse, Browning had never lost a son in infancy. Browning's son Robert, in a letter to the Times, December 5, 1902, referred to the incident. Home was detected in a vulgar fraud. The researchers Joseph McCabe and Trevor H. Hall exposed the levitation of Home as nothing more than his moving across a connecting ledge between two iron balconies. The psychologist and psychical researcher Stanley Lefevre-Krebs had exposed the Bangs sisters as frauds. During a séance he employed a hidden mirror and caught them tampering with a letter in an envelope and writing a reply in it under the table which they would pretend a spirit had written. The British materialization medium Rosina Mary Showers was caught in many fraudulent séances throughout her career. In 1874, during a séance with Edward William Cox, a sitter looked into the cabinet and seized the spirit. The headdress fell off and was revealed to be Showers. In a series of experiments in London at the house of William Crookes in February 1875, the medium Anna Eva Fay managed to fool Crookes into believing she had genuine psychic powers. Fay later confessed to her fraud and revealed the tricks she had used. Frank Hearn, a British medium who formed a partnership with the medium Charles Williams, was repeatedly exposed in fraudulent materialization séances. In 1875, he was caught pretending to be a spirit during a séance in Liverpool and was found clothed in about 2 yards of stiffened muslin, wound round his head and hanging down as far as his thigh. Florence Cook had been trained in the arts of the séance by Hearn and was repeatedly exposed as a fraudulent medium. The medium Henry Slade was caught in fraud many times throughout his career. In a séance in 1876 in London, Ray Lancaster and Brian Donkin snatched his slate before the spirit message was supposed to be written, and found the writing already there. Slade also played an accordion with one hand under the table and claimed spirits would play it. The magician Chung Ling Soo revealed how Slade had performed the trick. The British medium Francis Ward Monk was investigated by psychical researchers and discovered to be a fraud. On November 3, 1876, during the séance, a sitter demanded that Monk be searched. Monk ran from the room, locked himself in another room and escaped out of a window. A pair of stuffed gloves was found in his room, as well as cheesecloth, reaching rods, and other fraudulent devices in his luggage. After a trial, Monk was convicted for his fraudulent mediumship and was sentenced to 3 months in prison. In 1876, William Eglinton was exposed as a fraud when the psychical researcher Thomas Colley seized a spirit materialization in his séance and cut off a portion of its cloak. It was discovered that the cut piece matched a cloth found in Eglinton's suitcase. Colley also pulled the beard off the materialization and it was revealed to be a fake, the same as another one found in the suitcase of Eglinton. In 1880, in a séance, a spirit named Yolande materialized. A sitter grabbed it and was revealed to be the medium Madame d'Esperance herself. In September 1878, the British medium Charles Williams and his fellow medium at the time, A. Rita, were detected in trickery at Amsterdam. During the séance, a materialized spirit was seized and found to be Rita, and a bottle of phosphorus oil, muslin, and a false beard were found amongst the two mediums. In 1882, C. E. Wood was exposed in a séance in Peterborough. Her Indian spirit control Paka was found to be the medium on her knees, covered in muslin. In 1880, the American stage mentalist Washington Irving Bishop published a book revealing how mediums would use secret codes as the trick for their clairvoyant readings. The Seabird Commission was a group of faculty at the University of Pennsylvania who in 1884-1887 exposed fraudulent mediums such as Pierre Loa Keeler and Henry Slade. The Fox sisters confessed to fraud in 1888. Margaret Fox revealed that she and her sister had produced the spirit rappings by cracking their toe joints. In 1891, at a public séance with 20 sitters, the medium Cecil Husk was caught leaning over a table pretending to be a spirit by covering his face with phosphor material. The magician Will Goldston also exposed the fraud mediumship of Husk. In a séance Goldston attended, a pale-face materialization appeared in the room. Goldston wrote, "I saw at once that it was a gauze mask, and that the mustache attached to it was loose at one side through lack of gum. I pulled at the mask. It came away, revealing the face of Husk." The British materialization medium Annie Fairlamb Mellon was exposed as a fraud on October 12, 1894. During the séance, a sitter seized the materialized spirit, and found it to be the Mellon on her knees with white muslin on her head and shoulders. The magician Samri Baldwin exposed the tricks of the Davenport brothers in his book The Secrets of Mahatma Land Explained, 1895. The medium Swami Laura Horose was convicted of fraud several times and was tried for rape and fraud in London in 1901. She was described by the magician Harry Houdini as one of the most extraordinary fake mediums and mystery swindlers the world has ever known. In the late 19th century, the fraudulent methods of spirit photographers such as David Dugwood and Edward Wiley were revealed by psychical researchers. Here Ward Carrington documented various methods, with diagrams, how the medium would manipulate the plates before, during, and after the séance to produce spirit forms. The ectoplasm materializations of the French medium Eva Carrier were exposed as fraudulent. The fake ectoplasm of Carrier was made of cut-out paper faces from newspapers and magazines on which fold marks could sometimes be seen from the photographs. Cut-out faces that she used included Woodrow Wilson, King Ferdinand of Bulgaria, French President Raymond Poincaré and the actress Mona Lisa. The séance trick of the Eddy brothers was revealed by the magician Chung Ling Soo in 1898. The brothers utilized a fake hand made of lead, and with their hands free from control would play musical instruments and move objects in the séance room. The physiologist Ivor Lloyd Tuckett examined a case of spirit photography that W. T. Stead had claimed was genuine. Stead visited a photographer who had produced a photograph of him with deceased soldier known as Pete Botha. Stead claimed that the photographer could not have come across any information about Pete Botha. However, Tuckett discovered that an article in 1899 had been published on Pietrus Botha in a weekly magazine with a portrait and personal details. The trance medium Leonora Piper was investigated by psychical researchers and psychologists in the late 19th and early 20th century. In an experiment to test if Piper's spirit controls were purely fictitious, the psychologist G. Stanley Hall invented a niece called Bessie Beals and asked Piper's control to get in touch with it. Bessie appeared, answered questions and accepted Hall as her uncle. The psychologist Joseph Jastrow wrote that Piper pretended to be controlled by spirits and fell into simple and logical traps from her comments. Science writer Martin Gardner concluded Piper was a cold reader that would fish for information from her séance sitters. The physiologist Ivor Lloyd Tuckett, who examined Piper's mediumship in detail, wrote it could be explained by muscle reading, fishing, guessing, hints obtained in the sitting, knowledge surreptitiously obtained, knowledge acquired in the interval between sittings, and lastly, facts already within Mrs. Piper's knowledge. 1900s. In March 1902 in Berlin, police officers interrupted a séance of the German occult medium Frau Anna Roth. Her hands were grabbed and she was wrestled to the ground. A female police assistant physically examined Roth and discovered 157 flowers as well as oranges and lemons hidden in her petticoat. She was arrested and charged with fraud. Another occult medium, Hilda Lewis, known as the flower medium, confessed to fraud. The psychical researchers W. W. Bagala and Everard Fielding exposed the British materialization medium Christopher Chambers as a fraud in 1905. A false mistake.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.